What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Lifting and Heels podcast. I'm Rachel, and I'm here with my co-host Heather. And today we're going to talk about having the competitor mindset and how it kind of trickles into life outside of competing as well. This is a talk for competitors, but also people looking to compete, and then also people just regular athletes or regular fitness goers who want to have like the discipline or have like somewhat of the discipline that a competitor has, and kind of like dive into what that actually looks like, what we do on a day-to-day basis of, as far as how we plan our days out, what our meals look like, all that kind of stuff. So I'm really excited to talk about this today. Heather and I thought it was an appropriate topic. I actually started prep for my 2022 season. I know, I'm so excited. Let me think. It was 2 days ago. 2 days ago, I started my prep for the 2022 season. And I would say not much mentally has changed for me, just because I've kind of gotten the lifestyle down to a point where even in off season, it really doesn't change too much for me. I stay structured for the most part. And for me, that's just what works. Heather, how about you? Like, do you notice a difference between yourself and your mental state in prep versus out of prep?
I do. My sister always tells me that I'm really close to my sister, and she always knows like when I'm kind of starting to think about prep. And I kind of start mentally preparing, even though I always, I pretty much eat healthy, maybe have a cheat here, cheat there. And my workout, like my cardio might go down, but I stick with the lifting. But when I start to think about competing, it's just like, it kind of sits, I kind of contemplate it. And then all of a sudden it's like a switch that goes off. Like Sunday, I'll wake up not in prep, and Monday morning, I'm like, you know what? I'm doing it. I'm starting it. Let's go. You just kind of go into prep. Like I go into competitor mode, and it's like, I'm focused on a goal, and now it's time to execute. Is that how you are?
Yeah, I think so. I think my mindset has definitely changed over the years too, as I've gone through more preps and more off seasons. I think for me, this is like the best starting place that I've ever had for the beginning of a prep. And I think a lot of it had to do with my mindset in my off season. So in previous years, off season was like, okay, let's lift as heavy as possible. Let's eat a lot. Let's enjoy life. And there's nothing wrong with that. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. When you're a competitor, you kind of have to keep into account like, okay, yes, this is off season, but I'm probably going to be stepping on stage within the next year to 2 to 3 years. So sometime within like the relatively near future, you're going to be prepping again. That being said, I think everyone kind of learns differently what works for them and what doesn't work for them. For me, I have a very, very easy time putting on muscle. I've never really had a problem with that at all.
Same.
Where it gets hard for me is cutting. So essentially just prep of losing the body fat, losing the water retention, like, and really just dialing in that condition. I would say this will be year 6. Wow, that's crazy to say. It'll be year 6 of me competing at this point. I've never nailed the conditioning that I wanted. There was one point that I was too lean, and that was for the Arnold. I just looked over dieted because I wanted to bring that conditioning in, but I also didn't know how to properly peak myself at that point. This year it's going to be different because I have someone else controlling that variable for me and all the rest of the variables that go into that. So I think it's going to be totally different. But that being said, I know in my mind, and I knew in my mind, even before I hired my coach, that, okay, I have a hard time getting weight off. That's just my genetics. That's how my body responds. So I knew I had to put on weight after the show, obviously, but I really was mindful of how much weight I put on after, especially
Mhm.
immediately after, because I think actually we got a lift in probably like 2 months after I competed, you and I,
I remember that.
and you
Yeah.
were like, "Are you competing still?" And I'm like, "No,
Yeah.
I'm like deep in off season." You're like, "You look lean." And I'm like, "Thanks." I wasn't expecting that whatsoever because I
Mhm.
mean, you know how it is, like when you start to add some weight after a show and you're still relatively lean, but you lose the lines and everything, you
Yeah.
don't really see how you are truly
Well, it
in other
it
people's
it's
eyes.
well, and it's hard because, like, you just got done seeing yourself in, like, freak factor mode. You know what I
Mhm,
mean? Like, you had all
mhm,
the crazy line like, you're super lean in a place that shouldn't be for a long period of time, and so then that's what you are comparing yourself to. So, like, when you do put on even, like, 5 pounds, when you start like you said, you start to smooth out, to you, it does you don't realize how still tiny you are, you still look lean to the average person. It's just because your, like, unit of measure was just now is freak mode. So now you
right,
know that, so now you compare yourself to freak mode. So
right.
I totally get that.
And that was my thing. So I kept that mindset and through all of my off season, like, okay, yes, I need to eat more. Okay, yes, I need to train hard still. But
Mhm.
I think the real difference was I really tracked everything as much as I could this off season. So I monitored how many times I had a cheat meal a week. Usually it was like 2 to 3, sometimes 4 if it was like a really bad week. But
Sorry, that was my dog.
no, it's
I
fine.
think my
Um,
dogs are crazy. They're like they're playing, but I think one got a little
a
too
little hurt. Yeah,
playful.
it's
Yeah.
okay. It's okay.
Um, but yeah, I'm sorry if you hear them in the background, but they don't understand that, like, I'm on a podcast right now. They don't care. Um, but no, and I think that one thing though, I think that kind of separates like the girls from the women when it comes to competing is how you said, you keep that in the back of your mind. Like, just like any goal, like, if whatever goal you have, there is no, like, timeout with the goal. You know what I mean? Like, you're always like, whether it's like starting a business, there's no, like, off season in starting a business. You might take some time off, like maybe, you take like a week off or whatever just to kind of like chill out, regroup, but everything is always going toward that goal. And I think a lot of times with competitors, they think off season means I'm done. Like, bring on the cake, bring on the pizza. I did my thing. And it's not, it's a 24/7, 365 days a week, or yeah, 365 days a week
Days a year.
sport. Like, or yeah, like in a year, whatever it is. But it's all day, every day. You have to think about that. Now, your strategy might change in that, but like, during prep, your calories are cut, your cardio's up. In off season, you're eating a little bit more and your lifts are a little bit better and your cardio's down, but you're still focused on the goal. And so many competitors, once they hit that off season, once they walk off the stage on their last show, it's like goodbye goal. And I'll see you in like 3 months when I start to think about competing again. And you can't. You always got to stay focused. That's at least that's my philosophy on it.
No, I agree with you, and I think for me, that was, like, the game changer this off season for myself was I was thinking that I wanted to go to nationals this upcoming year. I wanted to really, like, compete and see where I end up in that national lineup. Um, I personally just really think that for a while, like, competing was a hobby of mine
Mhm.
that I just liked to do because it was something different and it was challenging and it was fun and, all those kinds of things. But I think the switch flipped in my head this year of, I have a chance. Like, I have a
Mhm.
chance. My coach, who has made multiple people in all divisions pro, and who is a pro himself, has said, you have a really good shot like this upcoming year.
Oh,
I
for sure.
think that made a switch in my mind of like,
Mhm.
okay, this is no longer a hobby. This is
Mhm.
something to where I can eventually be a professional athlete in. And to me, like as cliche as this sounds, like if you want to be a professional, you need to act like a professional. You need to conduct yourself like a
100%.
professional.
Mhm.
You don't see professional athletes, whether it's in bodybuilding, whether it's in football, whether it's in basketball, soccer, whatever you want to compare it to. You don't see them just completely saying F it and going and partying and eating a bunch of crap all day, every day, and just saying, I'll come back and train, in 3 months when
Yeah,
it gets closer. You don't see that
100%.
from professional athletes. So for
They are
me,
practicing their thing every day. Like,
yeah, right.
quarterbacks are throwing every day.
Right. Exactly. And I think
Mhm.
that's the biggest game changer for anyone. For anyone. Like
Mhm.
if you want something bad enough, you will do whatever it takes to do it and to achieve that goal.
100%.
Whether it takes 6 months, whether it takes a year, whether it takes 10 years. If you want it bad enough, you're going to work for it. That's
Mhm.
like that is one thing that I have seen and learned and just have come to really just realize in all aspects of life, not just competing, not just like at work, not just starting a business. I mean, it's literally anything and everything that
Mhm.
you want for yourself or you want to do in life, you have to work for it. I'm sorry, but nothing drives me more insane than when people will complain about certain things and they're not do then they don't want to do it. Like the opportunity is right in front of them.
Mhm.
The opportunity is right
Oh,
in front of them and
100%.
it's given to them and then they turn it down. And then they say, "Well, that's not going to work for me because that's not like that doesn't fit my lifestyle." Okay, well then
100%.
if you have a goal, then you have to do what it takes. You got to be uncomfortable
Mhm.
eventually to get to where you
100%.
can be comfortable. And
100%.
it it just it blows my mind, honestly,
Oh,
like, the amount of
oh.
thing especially our generation, I don't know why our generation is like that, and I sound so old when I say that, but I don't
Trust
mean to,
me,
like, go on a rant, but it's just
it drives me insane, and I'm, like, a generation above you. Like, it drives us
I
even
know,
more insane because it got worse every year, and, like, well, here's what I think happened. Instagram happened, and then all of a sudden people see these overnight successes that really took 10 years to get.
Mhm,
So in their mind, they can become successful without the hard work that it takes. And let me I know I've paid my dues. I've worked my ass off to do what I'm doing, like for what I want to do. And people out there think that it's just like, well, I want to do this. So like, where is it? Like, you need to give it to me. And it's like,
right.
you haven't done anything. Like,
Shit just doesn't fall
you're
in your lap, like, it really doesn't.
nothing,
Like, granted,
not at all.
there are times when you will have, like, amazing opportunities that fall in your lap that you're like, "Well, where the hell did this come
100%.
from? But this is great." There are things that are like that, but the majority of the time,
Mhm.
it is not going to be like that. Um,
No.
and I think for myself, back to our topic, like the competitor mindset has really taught me how to apply that to every area of my life.
Mhm.
Um, like being a competitor, you have to plan in advance. You have to
Mhm.
know I mean, when I say plan in advance, I don't mean like, okay, you're gonna go to the gym at some point and you're gonna make your food at some point in the day. No, like
Mhm.
you need to know exactly what you're doing from the
Yep.
time you wake up to the time you go to bed. And you allot
Mhm.
yourself a certain amount of time for each thing that you have to do.
Oh,
And
yep. I
even
totally
s-
agree.
and I think too, just even scheduling in time to just like debrief and just
Mhm.
relax for a second, like, it's on a schedule, but at the same time, it it almost makes you, like, want to do it or have to do it more, if that makes sense?
Mhm.
So, like,
No, I
for
totally get
me,
that.
my prep mindset has always been, "Okay, I wake up. I give myself 15 minutes in the morning to wake up, like fully wake up. Well, I shouldn't say fully, halfway wake up enough to where I can go do cardio and be alive. Um,
Yeah. And move.
and move. Yeah.
Even if you're like asleep and you're moving.
So I'll do that. I'll give myself those 15 minutes. I'll get ready. I'll go do cardio. I'll come back. I'll eat. I'll shower. And then depending on, I guess, like what job I had at the time, it could vary. I could either go to the gym and then go to work, or I could go to work and then go to the gym. It just totally depends on like what my work schedule is like. And I think that's another thing that I also want to, I guess, touch on and talk about too is competing is not for the weak-minded
No.
by any means.
Mm-mm.
Um, if you compete, you really have to want it. You have
Mhm.
to be willing to sacrifice a lot for it. Um,
Yep.
Granted, there are things in your life that are not negotiable whatsoever. Like you can't just say like, "Oh, I have to train, so I can't go to work today."
Yeah.
No, that's not how it's going to work at all. You kind of have to work your competing life around the rest of your life, whether you're a
Mhm.
parent, whether you have a full-time job, whether you have multiple jobs, whether you have all these other prior commitments that take precedence over what is going on with your competing life. You have to make it work around
Mhm.
everything else. And I think for me, having that competitor mindset has really been able to help me. I don't want to say balance things because I think I'm still working on
Yeah,
balance
that's
a lot
yeah.
in my life. But it's
Mhm.
definitely helped me with time management, and it's definitely helped
Mhm.
me become more productive in other areas of my life for sure. I think looking back on previous preps, like when I prepped in college, I had 3 part-time jobs and went to school full time, and I
Yeah,
still
a
prepped.
lot.
Um,
Mhm.
and then this past prep, I mean, I was working, or no, I wasn't working. I was in school, but I was in school full time. So I was also making that work while doing like little side things. Um, and then even for like my Arnold prep, I was working. That was when I was working split shift as a fitness coordinator. So I'd be up at
Really.
5 a.m. and then I would get my cardio
And
in.
and prepping during the winter is the worst
Oh, it's
for the
horrific.
Arnold.
It is
It
horrific. It is horrific.
I did that once too. It was that you know what though, when you do that, like there's prep and then there's prepping in the winter. And I will say once you do the winter, everything else seems easy.
Everything else is a breeze, honest to God.
Like,
I
oh,
mean, nothing is
I that was
worse
bad.
than getting up and it's pitch black and it's
Mhm.
so cold outside. And then you got to turn your car on if you have to go and drive. For me, I was lucky enough to have a treadmill right across from where I lived because
Oh, see
in the
that's
clubhouse they had treadmills and all that
oh
kind of
yeah.
stuff. So I would just trudge over to the clubhouse. And this was like the winter where we had a bunch of snow, like
Oh
a bunch
really?
of snow. Yeah. So I would like layer
Ugh.
up in my cardio stuff. And then I would wear that on the treadmill. And then as the time went on, I would just peel layers off like
Yeah,
here
because
and
the gyms are like, the gyms are never warm. Like, at that
there.
time,
No,
they're never
no.
warm, they're freezing. I remember I walked maybe, like, 3 city blocks from my gym. So, like, I remember, like and it was, like, downtown Columbus, so I'm like, "Oh my god, I hope, like, no, like, killers are out." Because it's pitch
Oh my
dark, and I'm
God.
like, "They gotta be in bed by now," you know what I mean?
Yeah.
At 5 in the morning, I'm like, "Hope, nothing happens," but, like, trudging through the snow, and it's like I'm a big believer in the saying that's like whatever doesn't kill you make you stronger. And I mean, if you survive a prep in the winter, I think you're golden for a lot of things in life. Like, I mean, I'm not trying to be funny on that. Like, I mean, no matter what it is, it's like I always think back. And like when I'm having a hard day, if I'm just trying to juggle too many things, whatever it is, I'm like, I did that. You know what I mean? Like I successfully competed a prep in the winter when so many people would have just been like, oh, I'm out of here, you know?
Mhm.
And once you do that, I think it carries over into so many different things in your life. And it makes you realize that no matter what you put your mind to, you're okay. Like you can do it. It doesn't matter. It's just you have to want it enough. I think that that's what it
That's
kind
the
of shows
lesson
you.
of it. That's the
Yeah,
lesson of it for sure.
it
I
has
mean,
nothing to do with like, are you good enough? It's like, no, do you want it enough? That is the thing that determines, if you're going to be successful or not.
no, absolutely. I mean, that kind of just hit the nail on the head with you can do anything that you want to do. It's like
Mhm.
cheesy and cliche as that
Mhm.
sounds, like you can literally do whatever you want to do. It's, are you willing
100%.
to work for it? Are you willing to put in
Mhm.
the time? Are you willing to put in the energy? Are you willing to put in the money? Are you any of it? Are you
Mhm.
willing to sacrifice a little to eventually have everything that you wanted at that point?
Yep.
Um, and it's kind of
Totally agree.
I think about my parents when we talk about this because there were things that, like, I was really, really good at growing up, like, I was really good at tennis, and I was good and I played the flute randomly. Um,
Oh, really?
yeah, for, like, a year.
That's impressive.
No,
I
it's
tried to
it's
play
really
an
not.
instrument when I was
It's really
without
not.
I think it is. I tried to play the trumpet when I was in 5th grade, and let me just tell you, that lasted like a week. It was terrible. I have no talent, not 0.
Oh, stop. But the point of why I
Ask my
brought it up
parents.
was because the point of why I brought that up was because those things, like, came easily to me, and
Mhm.
I was really good at them, but I didn't want to do them.
Mhm.
And my parents were like, "Why would you not wanna do these things?" And I did things like I wanted to do things that were harder for me. Like, I wanted to do gymnastics, and I wanted to cheer, like, competitively. And by no means was I, like, the one of the best on the team. Like, I was terrible at tumbling. I mean, I think honestly, my tumbling coach at the
See?
time wanted to kill me
Oh,
because it took me, like, a year to get a back handspring. It took me, like, over a year to get a back tuck. Like, it was just things that came quicker to other girls, it took me forever.
yeah.
It took me
Well,
forever, but I wanted to
you're
do it because it was so hard for me, and I wanted
you're
to
better
prove.
than You're better than me getting a back tuck because I still haven't got my back tuck, and I cheered for, like, years. I was too afraid. Like, fear
Yeah.
that's another lesson. Fear can stop you from reaching your goals
Yeah,
100%.
but I think that's another thing, though. I mean, you're always gonna be afraid of the unknown, and you're always gonna be afraid of, well, what if I fail, or what if, like, this is not what I thought it was gonna be, or this is not what,
Mhm.
I planned for. I mean, I think you can say this, and I know for sure I can say this. You can plan all you want. You can plan your whole
Oh,
life out, and it'll
it
end up totally different. Not always, but I mean, I can for sure say looking back 5 years ago, n
Mhm.
I where I am now, I would have never in a million years thought
Oh,
that I would
100%.
be doing what I'm doing now, that I would be, like, in the spot that I am in, like,
Mhm.
just my work life and my personal life and my relationship, like, everything. I would have never in a million years thought that I would be at where I'm at, and I think I had, like, at the time, I thought I had it all figured out. I
Mhm.
thought I, was going to school and I was gonna be like this big personal trainer in Northeast Ohio, which I don't know why I didn't do more research on that at the time, but we all have pipe dreams. We all have
Uh,
pipe dreams.
yes.
Um, and I just thought I was gonna be living back in Youngstown. Like, I thought like I had it all figured out for myself. And I'm not anywhere near where I thought my life was gonna go, and I am so grateful for that, because you
Mhm.
may think you want something at one
Oh, for
time,
sure.
but that may not necessarily be the case. I mean, I think people
Mm-mm.
change and people evolve, and
Yes.
what they see as their future or what they want can change.
Mhm.
But that being said, if it's something you really want, but you're not like entirely sure that, you're going to want it for a long period of time, or you're going to want it in the long run, or any of that, I think you should still go for it, because you're never
Mhm.
going to regret going for something big,
Mhm.
even if it never goes anywhere, or if it doesn't lead into what you wanted it to, but you worked
Mhm.
hard for it and you did accomplish it to some extent. You're never going to
Mhm.
regret doing all of that. And you're never going to regret putting
No.
in the work. You're never going to regret, because every single thing that you do, in my opinion, I feel like we're getting really deep right now.
Yeah.
Every
No, but
single
that
thing,
I love talking about this stuff
I mean, every
like that.
single thing you do is going to lead you into your future. Every single
Mhm.
decision you make, every single bad thing that happens, every single good thing that
Yep.
happens, every single person you meet, there's
Mhm.
there's something to it where it will literally just kind of like build your life as you
Mhm.
go on, and you don't
Totally
realize
agree.
it at the time. I
No,
mean,
not at all.
even us, for example, like when I met you, what, 5 years
Oh,
ago?
yeah.
5 years ago, I would have never guessed we would have had a podcast and like
No, like
and become friends and everything like that. Like, I just thought you
Mhm.
were like a really cool girl that competed, who
Aw.
knew a lot about the sport. So I wanted to like get to know you better. Like, that was literally it. But it's just funny how things work out. And I
It
think
is.
the more you go for, the more likely you are to
Mhm.
have what you want and succeed in what you want.
I totally agree. And I'm a big believer in, like, when you ask somebody and they're like, "Well, what it is like, what's your goal? What do you wanna do?" If someone, like, starts complaining about their job, "Well, what is it that you would wanna do?" And someone goes, "Well, I don't really know." I believe they do know. It's inside. It's inside them, and they're afraid to say it. And I think that once you really grasp what it is that you wanna do, and you're like, "Okay," like, you admit to yourself, "This is what I wanna do," and you start you're like, "I'm gonna actually go after it." That doesn't mean all of a sudden you quit your job and you just go and you start going toward it. Like, I
No.
mean, like, start thinking about it and really
Mhm.
start, like, start seeing yourself doing it. And like, kind of thinking like, okay, I have this job, but like, how can I have this job and maybe start, make taking steps toward this goal? All of a sudden, things start like getting put in front of you that you didn't have before. And I mean, I've read all kinds of different things on like why this happens, whether it's like what your brain focuses on, all of a sudden that's what it sees, like all the different opportunities. It's kind of like they always use the example of if you're shopping for a car and you start, you pick out the car that you want to buy, all of a sudden you start seeing them on the road where you're just like, oh my God, did everyone just buy this car? Like I've never even noticed that everybody had this car before. It's because your brain, it's in your brain and all of a sudden you start noticing it. Same thing with a goal. If you finally admit to yourself, this is what I want to do, like we'll just say bodybuilding, it's like all of a sudden I want to compete. I want to start competing. Well, you don't even have to tell everybody yet, because sometimes that's scary to say exactly, what a big goal, big dream that you want to do. But you start thinking about it. All of a sudden, you're going to see, like, all of a sudden, you're going to notice that girl at the gym that's probably been there for the last 6 months in front of you. She competes. Well, maybe, one day she'll like go on the treadmill next to you and you're like, oh, you compete and you start chatting up and start a conversation. And all of a sudden she recommends you to a trainer. And all of a sudden it's like, now you're smack dab in the middle of your goal. And I believe that that stuff really does happen. But
No,
I
I
think
do
first
too.
you got to admit it to yourself that that's what you really want to do. And I think a lot of people are afraid to admit what they want to do.
I think a lot of people are afraid, but I think a lot of people don't believe in themselves enough to do it
Yeah.
either. Um,
Mhm.
I think that a lot of times people will think they're they're afraid of judgment, but then they're also afraid of, what are other people going to say? Are they going to think this is
Mhm.
weird? Are they going to think like this is dumb? Like,
Mhm.
And I think too, there is some benefit to keeping like big goals to yourself.
Yes,
And the
100%.
reason being is because when you have like all those outside voices coming in, and one saying it's a good idea, one saying it's not a good idea, one saying it's
Mhm.
stupid, one saying you should do this, one saying you start here, it gets very overwhelming. Um,
It it does.
and I will tell you, I think the most clear-headed prep I ever had was for the Arnold. And the reason I say that is because I didn't tell a soul other than my parents at the time
Mhm.
that I was prepping for
Well,
the
I know,
Arnold.
'cause I was, like, surprised. I was like, "What are you doing here?" You
I
know?
remember I
And I
ran
was
into
like,
your dad
"Yeah."
at the Arnold. Like, I literally ran into him at the expo, like, with my
Uh-huh.
tan on, with everything going, and he's like, "Are you competing right now?" And I'm
Yeah.
like, "Yeah." Yeah. Literally, I saw him and Dean just, like, walking through the
Oh, yeah. Probably with their North Coast shirts on.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
That's
It
so
was so
funny.
it was so funny, but I think that prep for me, like, people obviously started to figure out, like, I was doing something, and then they started asking
Yeah.
questions. Probably, I'd say, like, I hit it pretty well, though, for I'd say up to the last, like, 6 weeks.
Mhm.
And I did a 22-week prep for that.
Oh, wow.
Um,
A long prep.
and I was so just very, like, clear-headed and
Mhm.
at peace, and I wasn't worrying about what everyone thought of me. I didn't feel like this pressure of like, oh, everyone knows I'm in prep, so like I really have to do good.
Mhm.
And that was the first time I ever coached myself, and that was like a big show to coach myself for.
Yeah, that's a very big show.
Um, so I mean, I felt very, very nervous at the time. So I just told myself like, I'm not going to tell anyone. I'm not going to tell a soul. Besides my parents, of course, 'cause my
Yeah.
my dad knows everything. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, he does. He knows everything about my life. But
That's good though. That's you always have to have
you
that
have to
one
have one
person
person.
that
Yeah.
knows everything, that you can tell everything to, that you know is never gonna get repeated.
Yeah.
My parents are the same, like, they're my, like, like, I just blab to them about
Mhm.
everything.
Yeah. But I think if it's something that scares you and you think in your head, like, "Maybe I won't do this, maybe it's too much of a
Mhm.
risk," like, and then you start thinking about like, oh, I'm going to tell people, like, I wonder what they're going to say, I wonder what she's going to say, I
Mhm.
wonder what my mom's going to say, I wonder what my dad's going to say. Like, I think at that point, if you're already worrying about it before you tell
Yep.
people, keep it to yourself. Keep it to
Mhm.
yourself, but do enough research and do enough, just, I guess, for lack of better terms, digging to find out what exactly you need to do and the steps you need to take in order to achieve
Mhm.
that goal. And I think that comes in with our topic of having a competitor mindset. If you want to succeed in competing, or if you want to succeed at anything in life, you most of the time you have people that you either idolize or you look up to. And at that point, you need to study them. You need to study,
Mhm.
and not in like a creepy way or anything, but like
Yeah.
just study like their routine, study what they're
Mhm.
doing, how they run their day, how they train, what they're eating. Like, not obviously like the amount of what they're eating, but like
Yeah.
how they go through their day. And at
Mhm.
that point, you'll learn things from them that maybe you didn't utilize or know before, and then you can kind of implement that to see if it works for you. And I mean,
Mhm.
to be completely honest, that's how I coached myself for as long as I did. I i probably drove myself insane for how many videos and podcasts I listened to and watch on different like bikini pros, and what they did and what their training was like and what their diet was like and how much cardio they were doing. And I kind of like took all pieces of the puzzle at that point and just tested each one out as I went.
Mhm.
And I think in order to do that, you have to be, and again, it's not just competing, but
Mhm.
In order to do that, you have to be so mentally resilient that you are not afraid to fail. Like you almost have
Mhm.
to have in the back of your mind, like, okay, I expect to fail at least like once or twice, but I know I'm going
Mhm.
to eventually get there.
Yeah.
And I think as a
Yep.
competitor, that is so, 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 so important because the reality of it is you're not always going to win. You're not going to
Mm-mm.
go and get your pro card on your first shot majority of the time. Like let's be honest,
Mhm.
like we all have that goal, we all have that dream, but in reality that's not the case. Um you have to be mentally resilient enough to realize like, okay, I did everything that I possibly could. I put in every ounce of energy that I had, every ounce of just my soul that I could give to this prep, and I did everything that I
Mhm.
could. At this point, it's in the judge's hands, and that's kind of like where it is in life too. Like you have to give
Mhm.
110% of yourself to whatever your goal is every
Mhm.
single day. And I preach consistency, and people probably get so freaking annoyed with it, but it's like
It's true
that
though.
it's true. It's true because I can't tell you how many times I've tried something and I failed
Mhm.
miserably, miserably. And I mean, obviously you get upset and you don't know what to do at this point, but you have to like keep going in order to
Mhm.
get to where you want to be. Um, like the example that
Like,
I like to use for this is, you know, I went to college. I went 4 years. Okay. I suffered. I hated every minute. Like I remember I used to come home to my dad and like just cry and just,
really?
oh my God, it was horrible. I mean, the classes I took were really hard
Gotcha.
because I was
So
originally
you
going
just
for
not
physical therapy.
got okay.
I
So
was
you just didn't
originally, I,
like did you just not like the school part? You were just like, I'm over this.
I,
Like
th-
I
I,
don't
th-
wanna
I think the testing honestly is what like freaked me out the most. Um,
got it.
because I could do really good on projects and really good. I was disciplined with homework and like I did everything and I did it on
Mhm.
time, but like I would bomb tests for like absolutely no reason.
Yeah,
Absolutely no
like
reason.
and some people just like tests are not really a good judgment of like how good you really know that, the material. And I'm the opposite. I'm a good test taker. Like I will never forget this. I'm in high school, I'm in Spanish. I'm terrible at Spanish, terrible. And somehow, like, I had a couple guy friends in my class, and like, I'm like the one, like they'd always call on me, you have to speak Spanish. I'm like, I'm out. You know what I mean? Like, just give me whatever, just dock me the points because I'm not doing it today. And I would get like A or a B. And my like guy friends in my class would like joke, like, what are you doing to the teacher that you're getting this A or B because
Oh
you
my
suck? And I'm
God.
like, I'm a good test taker. Like, for whatever reason, I can just regurgitate, shit on a paper. And but a lot of people aren't like that. And that's why that's a whole other issue, but like that's why I don't like tests in school, like some testing in school. But
Yeah. Yeah.
um
But point being was like, I hated college and I went for 4 years and I really didn't think like I was going to get my degree whatsoever. Like I didn't get
really,
bad grades or anything, but like every
uh,
day I contemplated
it was
dropping
just that
out.
much of a struggle.
Yeah. It was just very stressful for me. So literally when I say like almost every day I contemplated dropping out,
That's crazy.
I did. And the only reason I stayed in was because I knew how like proud my dad would be if I graduated.
Mhm.
And like that's
Yeah.
what kept me going. That like my dad's like
Aw.
happiness is like what kept me going on that. But needless to say,
That's awesome though.
I went, thank you though. Thank you. I went
I think that
and
I think that's really good.
yeah, he's the best. But
Aw.
I
He's probably still so proud of you for this. Yeah, like
well, it's funny, he
and his,
listens to the podcast like
oh my
religiously.
god, my parents do too.
Religiously.
It's so funny.
So, hi dad.
Yeah, hi.
um it was just funny like the way things worked out. I mean, I went to school for 4 years. I thought like that was what I was going to be doing for the rest of my life, but I knew that's what I
Mhm,
didn't want to be doing for the rest of my life.
mhm.
And I made the jump to go back into school when I was 24 years old. after I had
Mhm.
already went and went through a 4-year undergrad program. Like, but I can honestly say it was like probably the best decision that I ever made for myself, because I know that what I do now and what career I'm building now,
Mhm.
I thoroughly just I love what I do. I absolutely love what I do. Um and
But
for me
but
there's
you know
no
what, like,
price tag on that.
but think about how early on that was, and I like I said, I feel like our dads are very similar, and, like, they instilled in us, like, enough to where like, you wanted to make him proud, so you would do whatever it took to get that goal, and I think that early on, we were taught the importance of that, and how even though, like, you might have hated every day, and how much like, going through that, like, you got used to, hating, you're like, "Oh, I don't wanna go to school, I don't wanna do this," but you saw a goal at the end, and you knew, "If I did this, I would reach my goal, no matter how much pain I had to suffer from this, no matter how much times I had to cry to my dad." Taking that into life after that, like, you're already accustomed to that because no goal is easy to do. You know what I mean? Like no goal
Mhm.
is just like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do. Like the path is open, like super easy, like little walk to my goal. Like you're gonna do stuff that you don't like to do. So I
Yeah.
think that that's a great, like, that was something that we were both blessed with to have that like lesson, taught to us early on that like here's the goal, this is what you do.
Like you got to work
So
for it. Yeah.
like 100%, or you go through, even if it came easy to you, like if you didn't like it, you got to do this, like,
Yeah.
um, and you get success at the end.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, I give full credit, full credit to my father for that. I mean, I I don't even know how he did it. I don't know when he started doing it,
Yeah.
but he just instilled a work ethic in me to where I've always wanted to work for things myself. I never
Mhm,
wanted anything handed to me. And if anything
mhm.
is handed to me, I hate it.
Yeah.
I absolutely hate it. I do not want it. I do not want to accept it. I just don't.
Mhm,
It doesn't feel right to me. And granted,
mhm,
like believe me, there are plenty of days where I'm like, I'm friggin' exhausted. Like
mhm,
I just worked, 55, 60 hours this week, but all I want to do is sleep. I just want a day off, blah, 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 blah. And like, believe me, I have those moments of just like being irritated and like, why
yeah.
am I doing all of this?
Mhm,
But I think in the end for myself, like I can never look back on these years in the future and be like, I didn't do enough. I never want to
mhm,
look back and be like, I didn't do enough. I should have done more. I
mhm,
should have gone and done this. I should have applied myself here. Um, and
mhm,
I think again that relates back to the competing topic of you never want to look back on your prep and be like,
mhm.
it were only for that one day. If I would have just finished my cardio, if I would have just stuck to my meal plan that day, if I wouldn't have had that extra bite of God knows what, like
Yeah.
you never want to look back and be like, well, shit, I should have done this or I shouldn't have done this.
Mhm. You wanna
Eh,
know that you gave it your all, and if you know what, like, sometimes the cards are stacked in your favor when you step on stage, sometimes they're not, but at least, like, everybody wants to win. This is why I love bodybuilding for so many other things in life over any other sport. I mean, I played softball, I was a cheerleader, like, and I tried other sports, like, nothing compares to bodybuilding, like, the lessons that you can, transfer over into other life things.
There's no other discipline like bodybuilding. There is
There
no
really
other
isn't.
discipline. And I don't care what anyone says,
Mm-mm.
bodybuilding is the hardest sport. And the reason it's the hardest sport
100%.
is because it takes mental just durability. Like
And
you
it affects
have to,
every
Oh,
aspect of your life is affected.
yes.
Your sleep, your eating, your training. Like pro football players can eat what they want, like within reason, obviously,
They can eat
but
what they want. They can sleep a few hours and then they can go play a
100%,
game and be fine. Us, on the other
100%,
hand, it's like if you miss 5 minutes of your cardio, you're screwed. If you don't get enough
100%.
sleep, you're gonna look watery. If you don't eat
Mhm,
enough meals, you're not gonna be able to train hard, which therefore then you're gonna be flat. You're gonna look like crap. Like
mhm.
it's so much.
Everything
There's
is,
so many
yeah.
pieces of the puzzle in bodybuilding, and it's so complex that you have to you have to be like mentally durable in order to
You do.
do that. And then also just the fact too of, again, not everyone wins. So
Mhm,
you could think you look the best on stage. You could put 30 weeks of prep in there and be just
mhm,
absolutely on point to a T. Like you've done everything that you possibly can, and you may think you look the best, and your coach may think you look the best, but the
mhm.
judges may think you look like shit compared to everyone else. So that day you're
Yep.
going to lose. And you just spent all this money on travel. You spent all the money on the
Mhm.
federation card, on the show fees, on your tan, on your posing, on your suit,
It's a
on
lot.
on all of it. And you have to in your mind say, okay, this wasn't a waste of my time.
Mhm. I'm
This
gonna
was not
keep
a waste of
going.
my time. I'm going to keep going because I know I can do better. I know I can do more. And I know that I'm capable of doing more. So again, I
Yeah.
think
Well, and two, so for any, like, how we talked about earlier in the podcast, like that fear of failing, you have to be okay with failure. There is nothing more, like, I don't even wanna say horrifying, but, like, terrifying, I should say, than working your ass off and standing on stage almost naked to say, "Judge me, please," and then failing at it. You know what I mean? So, like, if you can get through someone literally judging you with nothing on and saying, "Please tell me how I compare to these other girls on stage," I'm sorry, anything in life, like,
it's kind of really screwed up when you think about it. Like when
it's
you really think
I mean,
about
it
it like
is.
that, it's not.
I love it, but it is. It's
Yeah, like
crazy, but
you love it or you hate it, but when like from a normal person's standpoint or an outside person's standpoint who doesn't know the sport, they're probably like, why on
yeah, like,
earth
why?
why would you want to get compared to other people almost butt naked and then starve yourself
Exactly.
for however long? Like when
It
you
is. Like,
truly
we have
think
to be
about it and say all the shit that we do out loud, you're like, what,
it trust me.
why do we do this?
100%. But I will tell you, anytime then, like, I go to start a business, like even this clothing business that I'm launching at the Arnold, you know what? It is not even half as terrifying as stepping on stage, half, almost naked, going, "Judge me." Do you know what I mean? Because I've I've already like I've went into shows where I didn't do good. I've already had that failure. I don't care. Like, no, I can now try anything in the world. Like, I'll try it. I'll see if I don't fail, or if I don't succeed rather, and I fail at it. Who cares? It's not going to be worse than me standing on stage with nothing on and being in last call outs. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, there's nothing.
Yeah.
Like, so I think that that is one of the best things for anybody. If you, like, I think it preps you for the to be tough enough to handle life in any aspect. What, like the toughness that it takes to diet, the toughness that it takes to get up and do cardio. Like, you want to do a business? I mean, you need all those skills. And you have to be okay with failing. And I just think like, it is nothing compared to, like, when you're on a team, if you're on a pro sport, I don't care if it's a freaking Super Bowl.
No.
They lose, it's like, we're on a team. Maybe it wasn't just me. You are on stage by yourself. There is no team. You lose, it's you. Like, hey, your last call outs, like, you didn't compare to these girls that well. And
Well, because at
once you
that
go
point,
through
it's all on you. It is all on
100%.
you.
And I think that that is what makes you tough enough to go on and succeed in other things in
For
life,
sure.
because so many people I know and have so many people tell me, like, "Oh, I want to do this. I have this dream." And I'm like, "Okay, well, like, do it." Like,
Yeah, like what are you waiting
bring
for?
yeah. And it's like, like, I don't know, like, maybe I'll do it. And this is the funny thing that I've noticed, and it's a little off topic, but I kind of the same though, because, it's people don't like to put their money where their mouth is. And I mean, you see it in competing as well. People can have a dream and people can do some work toward people do a lot of work toward a dream. But when they have to put money down, all of a sudden, and the same goes for like a show. You can work out, you can diet, but when you have to put money down for that show, all of a sudden it's like, they
Mhm.
back up.
Mhm.
And I personally, like me, and I don't know if it's because I'm a Leo and we think we're like the greatest. I will always bet on myself. Like, if I'm putting all my money toward me. You know what I mean?
It's the Leo vibes for
It
sure.
has to be the
It's the
Leo
Leo
vibes for me.
vibes for sure. Because
And I tell
I'm
him like,
totally opposite. I'm totally opposite.
Really?
I
See,
whenever I have
I'm
like
like
an
this.
opportunity
Let's go.
that like scares me, I really have to like think about it for a second. Like I'm not I'm a Taurus. Literally, I
Yeah,
overthink
you guys are
everything.
you are the opposite of us, and you are more like security. You are like,
Yeah.
we should be on opposite ends of the astrology thing, but we're not.
Yeah.
But because my dad's a Taurus, and he used to think I was like nuts, and he was like tried not nuts, but he tried to kind of like corral me, like, just like, hey, like maybe
Yeah.
not
Like
do
bring it
all this
back down a
crazy
little
shit.
bit.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, like maybe like have some backup plans. And I'm like, oh, backup plans? What are you talking about? Backup plans don't exist in a Leo's world because we're gonna succeed.
That's so funny though because it's
So,
so true. It's so true. Like
mhm,
any Taurus I've ever met, we're all like,
yep,
we want the stability, we want the security,
mhm,
we want to know that like everything is set in stone, that it's going to be okay. And if there's even
yeah.
a 1% chance that shit's gonna hit the fan, we don't want any
You guys
part
are
of it.
here,
And
yeah,
like that's that's
here for it.
kind of how I am. I've
Yep.
gotten better over the years for sure, but that's I mean that could not describe you and I any better. Like
It's
I mean, my God,
100%.
like, I remember when you asked me to do this podcast, you're like, I have the facial bar opening and I'm doing my clothing line and I'm still like partially an accountant. And then I have like, I might prep next year too. By the way, would you want to do a podcast? And I'm like, are you out of your mind? Like, what is going
And I'm like, no, like
but I'm
that's
so
literally
happy
what
we
I'm
did
doing.
it. I'm so happy we
Oh,
did it. But like, that's like such a difference between people. And I think
mhm,
that correlates too to how like people have a mindset of going for the goal or I don't really know or not. And I
mhm,
think you kind of have to break that out. I mean, like you obviously you've always been like, sure, let's go for it. I like the idea. We're doing it.
yeah.
Me, I've been like, what's plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D, and then the backup plans to all of those. So I
And
think like,
but it's funny though, like, yeah, we're on 2 opposite ends of the spectrum, but, like, I will run stuff by my dad to make sure that, like, because I know if I don't have somebody, like, kinda holding me back a little bit, I'm gonna be, like, shot off in some crazy world thinking I can do literally everything, and I need someone to be like, Heather, you can only do 5 things, you can't do 10, like, maybe let's
Mhm,
calm down a little bit."
mhm.
So, like, I think that there's good and bads to both.
Oh, for
And
sure, but I think too it's important to have that mindset of being able to do it yourself, but then knowing, like you said, having someone that's gonna push you in
mm,
either direction.
yes.
That's gonna either pull you back a little and, like, bring you back down to earth for a second, or
Mhm,
push you and be like, "No, like, you're good enough to do this. You can do this. Like, you need to do
mhm,
this. Go." Um,
yes. And sometimes those are, like, the most, like, you might disagree with them a lot, like, and
mhm.
because I remember, like you said, like, you need plan A, B, C. I remember my dad's like, "Let's have a plan B." I'm like, "Plan B? Why don't we just have plan Z then? How many plans do you want me to have?" And he's like, "Are you crazy?" But
That's
I mean,
crazy.
you you need those, like even though you might disagree, like each side you have to have that person that kind of gets you thinking a different way, to
Yeah.
like remind you of that. But as long as there's a difference though between giving you a good perspective and helping you and blocking out those that are like you know, you're crazy. And like, I guess the biggest example I can give, because I do think it is very important to keep out negative people. And I remember I've always been like this. When I did my exit interview senior year of high school, you're supposed to sit down with a panel of teachers and talk about what it is do you want to do. I literally named like everything I'm doing now. And they looked at me, they're like, you need to pick like one. And I'm like, one? Like, are you out of your mind? Like, I'm not doing one thing for my
Yeah,
life.
like, do you know me?
And yeah, I'm like, hello. And they're like, Heather, like when you reach the real world, you need to do one. And I remember that like it was like eating at me, like that bothered me. And
Mhm.
for a long time, I did actually let that bother me because I was like, maybe I don't know everything, like maybe the world, maybe I'm being naive. And little things like that can eat at you. And it took me a little bit to be like, dude, they don't even know what the hell they're talking about. You know what I mean? Like, what? I don't want to be like what they are. Not that there's any, like, it's just we're different. Like, that's not my
Right.
goal. So, like, why am I listening to them? So then, how you said you earlier, you started looking at people like that, bikini competitors that you wanted to emulate and how trained yourself. I started looking at people that did what I wanted to do. That had multiple businesses, that didn't have a 9 to 5, because I'm just not a 9 to 5 person. I knew that from long time ago. I didn't negotiate my junior senior year of class. Like I think I had math my first period. I'm obviously I'm always late. I was like, listen, if I get an A and I'm here like an hour or a half hour in, like, can you just call it like, obviously I don't need the first half hour of your class. Like, can you just be okay with me coming in a half hour late? You know what I mean? And like, and that I realized early on, like, it wasn't I'm just not that type.
Mhm.
And so I started to research, how do people not have to have a job? And so, like, just like you did, and with the competitors, and you start to realize what kind of mindset they have and what they do every day. And it's very important to have that. But I want to go, but to like kind of bring back to my point is the difference between my dad and those teachers is my dad gives me advice on how I can do better to make sure you want to do a million things. Well, we got to make sure you do them like maybe two at a time. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
reel it in, where the teachers were like, you're not, this is a stupid dream. And I think it's very important to recognize the difference. And those negative people, like, sorry, block, like, we don't get to talk. Sorry, my dogs are starting again, but like, we're not going to talk about my dreams with you. You might talk about, what's on TV that day, or, what's going on that week, but you're not talking about your dreams. And I think you have to be very like very particular on who you talk to about what you want to do.
You have to be careful on that, but you also have to be careful who you choose as your support system.
Yes.
Having a support system in any kind of dream, whether it's bodybuilding, starting a business, school, whatever it is, if you do not have someone or
Mhm.
multiple people that you can trust and that they have your back, you're not going to succeed. You
Mhm.
can do a lot of things on your own, but at the end of the day, that person who you look up to, who was everything that you want to be, I
Mhm.
guarantee you that they have at least one person in their corner who supports them through thick and thin, and they do everything that they possibly can to make
Mhm.
that person as successful as they are.
Mhm.
And I think that's a whole other topic of discussion for another podcast, but having having a good support system versus having like an iffy one, or having
Mhm.
something that's like stressing you out, or someone that's stressing you out like 24/7,
Mhm.
it's so important. Like, I can't tell you enough how important it was for me to have Dave like in my last prep. I
Mhm.
mean, he cooked meals for me, he trained me at the gym, like, he made sure everything was on point for me. and because he knew how important like it was
Mhm.
to me. Um, and having someone like with you through that whole process is, whether it's a significant other, whether it's a family member, like, I don't
Family.
care. It could be a
Mhm.
best friend. I don't care who it is. But having one
Mhm.
person that you know has your back through the whole thing is huge, and it will
Mhm.
make or break you, in my opinion.
100%. And there is one quote that I heard from I really like this guy. He's on Instagram. I believe his name's The Real Bradley. And he said, like, okay, when you have like you're planting like corn. You plant corn seeds so you get corn. Like you're never gonna plant a corn, like corn seed and get tomatoes. So why do you think and he's like, if you plant shit, you get shit. Why do you think if you plant in your brain like unsupportive people, you're gonna all of a sudden get success? Like that doesn't work. If you
For sure.
plant unsuccessful people, you're gonna get a bad unsuccess. You know what I mean? Or like
I agree. Yeah.
unsupportive people rather. You're gonna get unsu non-success. And people I don't think that way. Like they're like, "Oh,
No.
well, I'm gonna go on this goal," and they think that they can surround themselves with crappy people, and all of a sudden that goal's just gonna happen, and that's not the case because you don't realize, like, that old saying, like, "You are the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with," that's real. Like, what goes in your subconscious brain, it is what, like, manifests in your life. Like, you might be able to, like, "Oh, like, Susie's just negative, I'm gonna block her out." But, like, when you constantly hear her, like, or she's commenting on your stuff, like, that you can't really block it out as much as you think you can. Like, that's gonna be in there, and then when times get tough, whether, it's you're going through like, if you're doing a prep and you gotta get up in the morning and trudge through the snow, or you're doing a business and maybe you didn't have that great of a month and you gotta keep pushing because you don't have the like, money's a little scarce. I've been there. Um, you have to like, that's when your brain kinda sorts through what it is in there, and when you have unsupportive people in there, like their comments, you're gonna be like, "Ugh," it you can tend to quit, and
Mhm.
you have to have nothing but positive stuff flowing in there or like support. Dave's there, supporting you, and you have all that positive reinforcement, and that is what gets you through those days that are tough. You're never, no matter how much you want a goal, it's not all sunshines and rainbows till you get that goal. You're always going to have those days where you're just like, oh my God, cardio freaking again. Like, I can't do this. And you need those people that are like, listen, you got to keep going. Just shut up, stop complaining, and go. Like I'll listen to you
Mhm.
bitch about it later.
Mhm.
And those people are just you can't put a price on those people.
I agree. I agree. Well, I think we had
Yeah.
a great conversation for today
Mhm.
about
Agreed.
mindset, competing mindset, how it kind of has gone into every branch of our lives. I loved this conversation. I really, really did. I think it's one of our
Me
best
too.
yet, for sure. And I think it will give a little insight to people as well too. So, with that being said, I think we're going to sign off for today.
Yeah.
Guys, please stay tuned for next week's episode. We have a fun one, as always, coming up. And then also, please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. We are on Apple, we are on Spotify, and we are also on YouTube now. So,
Yay.
that being said, like, subscribe. We greatly appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to us, and we will see you next week.
Bye, guys.
Bye.